well over £100 million.
Well, joining me from Hull is the man who originally took the government to court, the former prisoner John Hirst. He was convicted of manslaughter with an axe in 1980. And with me in the studio, the former Conservative Cabinet Minister, Jonathan Aitken. He served 18 months in prison for perjury. John Hirst, let me come to you first. The polls show that only about 9% of the British people want this to happen. It looks like the Commons is going to vote against it. So why should we have to do something we don't want to do?
Right, simply because the highest court in Europe has ruled that all prisoners should have the vote. And that's the position that is going to remain. I mean, this thing this afternoon is just a sideshow. Andrew, you know as well as I do that the control now is actually in Europe. We signed up to the convention, we signed up to abide by the court decision, and we have to abide by it. It's as simple as that. We can't go having Parliament breaking the law. I mean, where would that have us?
But Parliament makes the law and Parliament is sovereign. And the court hasn't told us that all prisoners have to have the vote. It simply said we need to look at it again. But my understanding of your position is that if all prisoners don't get the vote, you would be unhappy. Hello.
I've lost it, yeah.
Let me ask you that again. Is your...
No, on and the piece has come out. No, it's...
Nope. Now we've lost you. Let me go to, we'll see if we can make contact with Mr. Hirst again in a moment. Let me come back to you, Jonathan Aitken. Are you aware, is there a clamour among prisoners for the vote?
Absolutely not. I mean, during my 7 months inside, this was an unmentioned virtually issue. And if you stop and think about it for a moment, prisoners who are a pretty non-political lot, they care about a completely different list of priorities. If you were trying to say, what right would you like to have, a prisoner, the kind of right they might ask for is, can we have the right to receive and send emails,
sure.
Which might be quite useful for their rehabilitation. Okay. I mean, if you were thinking of the Olympic Games, I mean, prisoners' voting rights are somewhere down with tiddlywinks, not up there with 100 metres. And it's an absolute non-issue. I mean, I'm sure they're being able to find a few sort of...
Well, we have one here. Let's go back to Hull. According to Mr. Aitken, who served time in prison too, he says he never saw any demand among prisoners for this right.
Well, I remember reading the Guardian headline, he lied, he lied, he lied. And he's still doing that. To get back to your original thing, the court did actually say all prisoners must have the vote, Andrew. So all this nonsense about saying only some should have the vote is wrong.
But what evidence do you... Well, that's not the legal opinion that we've had, but let's pass on that.
Yeah, but the legal opinion is wrong.
Well, according to you, everybody's wrong except you, Mr. Hirst, on
exactly,
this.
yeah, because...
So can I ask, let me ask the next question. What evidence can you give our viewers today that, other than yourself, there is a clamour for votes among prisoners?
Well, I think they'll soon find out that when they start climbing on the roofs and rioting.
Well, what evidence have you got that that's going to happen?
Well, I think we had one, didn't we, on January the 1st, and that's the first time they've ever had one in an open jail.
Yeah, it wasn't about that.
It wasn't about that, but the whole thing about this is prisoners have got two options. They can either riot or they can litigate.
John Aitken, could you argue that giving at some stage a prisoner voting rights would be seen as part of a rehabilitation process, getting them back into society?
Yeah, I think...
No, hold on, I'm asking Jonathan Aitken.
I don't think it's important in rehabilitation. One vote once every 4 or 5 years isn't anything very important. It may be sort of psychologically to 1 or 2 people, but in practical terms, rehabilitation is always all about what should happen, you know, on the day you leave prison.
So it's not, in other words, you say.
No.
John Gond.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic, isn't it? A man like him who hacked on a landlady to death. I mean, let's remember what this man did. He was convicted of manslaughter, and here he is pontificating on it. As far as I'm concerned, you should lose your human rights the moment you go through my kitchen window to nick the DVD. That doesn't mean we need bread and water. It doesn't mean we shouldn't have rehabilitation. We should. But the P word needs to be there, punishment. And it is, frankly, and I don't know about David Cameron feeling sick to the pit of his stomach. This man makes me sick that he's on TV. I've been inundated on Twitter today that this man has the space to put forward these ridiculous views. And also, as well, this vote tonight is rather ridiculous as well, because what we do need in this country is a Bill of Rights. And the only way we're going to get that Bill of Rights is if actually we have a vote on the EU, and we get out of the EU first and foremost. We can't do anything with people like him whilst we remain in the EU. The only vote we need is a vote on Europe.
All right, well, let me come back to John Hirst. There is a widespread feeling, I understand you're answering this, that there is no constituency for giving prisoners voting rights. But for you, it's a one-man crusade. You had nothing else to do in prison. You've made this your lifetime hobby, and you speak only for yourself.
Well, it's funny that the court actually ruled in favour of all prisoners having the vote. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's what Europe has said. And what we've got at the moment is the UK is in the dock. I mean, John Gort tries to turn it round and attack prisoners, but it's actually the UK that is in the dock on this.
All right.
And they've got to amend for their behaviour, breaching people's human rights. They can't keep getting away with it.
Can you clarify this? Because Mr. Hirst has now said this several times, that the court ruling is that all prisoners have to have the vote. My understanding of the court ruling is that what it really says is that Parliament needs to consider this issue again and come up with a formula.
No,
and that it does not require all prisoners, even the European Court does not require all prisoners to have the vote.
You're absolutely right, and there are gradations, if you happen to be in favour of this, which you could let, and I think David Cameron's first shot at this was to say prisoners serving 1-year sentences or something should have the vote, but no, and this should really be decided by a democratic elected parliament.
Right, let me go back up to John Hirst there. Mr. Hirst, we're going to continue to debate this, and to your credit, you're the one that started it all going. But we've got coming up on our programme in a minute a Conservative MP, Priti Patel, who's taken a different position from you on this. Yeah. You've branded her, quote, a foreign import, though she's as British as you or me, Mr. Hirst. And you've also branded her, quote, a Paki, which I think nearly everybody watching this programme will regard as racially offensive. Would you like to withdraw both these? Would you like to withdraw both these?
That is a racist and xenophobic paper. To call me racist is a bit like the pot calling the kettle black.
Would you like to apologise to Miss Patel?
For what?
For calling her these things.
I don't see what I've done wrong, to be quite honest. Like I say, I mean, my understanding is that a racist and xenophobic newspaper, the Daily Mail, has made allegations.
So let me just get this right. You do not want to apologise for calling her, quote, a foreign import.
Like I say...
No, let me finish the question, Mr. Hirst. You do not want to apologise for using a racial epithet, and you do not want to apologise for calling her a foreign import. Is that correct?
Like I said, my understanding is that the racist and xenophobic Daily Mail is accusing me of racism.
All right.
Now, I've seen that on Twitter, and they say that's a pot calling the kettle black. And it is.
All right. Mr. Hirst, we'll leave it there, and the fact you don't want to apologise, I'll leave our viewers to make up their minds on that. Anita.
Well, joining us now from Central Lobby, as you hear, is the Conservative MP Priti Patel and also the former Deputy Prime Minister, I should say, John Prescott. Welcome to both of you. John Prescott, may I start with you? Just for a moment, please, just put this European Court of Human Rights ruling to one side, just for a moment. Do you, in your heart, think that prisoners should be allowed to vote?
I think you can have an argument about which ones of prisoners can. You can negotiate that with the European Court. They've made that clear, and Cameron's already made one proposal. I don't know whether it'll be acceptable or not. But the issue here is the rule of law. We agreed in 1998, when we passed by 2/3 of the majority of this House of Commons, to have and be part of the human rights. That means any dispute about it, whether it's prisoners, whether it's hacking the phones, has to be determined by judges in Strasbourg, where there's a difference on interpretation. That's the issue today, and Priti, I think, asked the Prime Minister, would he recognise the sovereignty of this House? He can't, and he didn't give you an answer, because even if they he could do, but he's got to recognise the law, as Ken Clark said.
Okay, but just, you know, people look to you, and you often say you're a plain-speaking man. I'll ask you the question again. In your heart, do you think prisoners, John Prescott, do you think prisoners morally should be allowed to vote? And if you say there's a gradation, which grade would you give the vote to?
Well, I don't think that's the issue, and I'm prepared to give so. Well, you know,
I mean, it's interesting
wait
though, that you won't
If you say
answer.
I've got a plain answer, will you allow me to answer?
Please do.
Because that's my prerogative. You asked the question. Under the present law and the 2000 Act, some prisoners already get the vote. The argument is, which would you give? I'm prepared to enter into that argument, but the argument is whether you're prepared to obey the law. That's the issue.
Now, just tell me, how do you feel about your colleague Jack Straw sponsoring the motion? We heard there was a bit of argy-bargy last night.
Well, I just disagreed with Jack at our parliamentary meeting. I don't know who put it out. Jack was saying this was an extension beyond the human rights agreement. No, it wasn't. He brought it in 1998. He agreed any dispute about the state on the interpretation of these rights, could be prisoners, could be phone hacking, will be determined by an independent court. That's what Parliament has signed up for.
OK, let me bring Priti Patel on this. We've signed it, the ink is dry. Priti Patel, I mean, this debate today really is just window dressing.
Well, I hope it is not window dressing, I really don't. And Anita, back to your earlier comment, you know, is this the right thing to do? In my view, it is not the right thing to do, to give prisoners the right to vote. It is something that I think is highly emotive. People object to it outside in the country as well. I mean, I know plenty of people have written to me. But fundamentally, criminals go to prison because they've done harm and they've broken the rule of law. You know, and I think it's appalling in this day and age that we're actually talking about the rights of convicted criminals rather than putting the rights of victims first. And so on this basis alone, I think it's absolutely fundamental that now this new Parliament has the right to say and the right to decide as to whether or not prisoners have the right to vote.
But even if they decide it, they can't change it.
But
do you agree with that?
Well, let me put that,
No, I don't.
Priti, I mean, apart from allowing you to vent and allowing other backbenchers to vent, the point of today's debate is what? It's not binding. David Cameron's hands are pretty much tied. What is the point?
Well, I actually think that is the purpose of today, actually. We have to have the debate and send a very clear message to the government and actually call upon the government, whatever the outcome is today, and I suspect that people will not want prisoners to have the right to vote through this debate today, but actually call upon the government to act upon the will of this Parliament and the will of the House and actually take that on board in terms of what they do going forward.
We gave up that
Okay.
right. They voted 2/3 of the members
And
of
are
Parliament.
you-
Go read the history, you weren't here. They actually made a point that, in fact, the House has given up that right to the court where there's a dispute of interpretation of the courts and the rights. That's what we agreed.
But at the same time, I mean, it might have happened back then, but at the same time, it is about time that we stood up for Britain.
Fine, get rid of the Act then. Is that what you want?
I'd be quite happy for
That's
that.
what
I
it's
really would.
about.
But
They
it's
want
not
to
about
get
that.
rid of the
It's not.
Human Rights
It's about
Act.
putting British people first and the will of the British public first as well. We've got to absolutely
This is
stop
Europe.
saying. We've got to start
Don't do
saying
the
no
Brit.
to
It's like
Europe.
him doing
No,
Paki.
but
Don't get blooming
we've got
making
to
comments
stop
like
saying
that.
no to Europe, bullying us and dictating us on issues of this nature and many other issues as well.
OK, well, Priti Patel, what do you feel then about the possibility that millions could be paid out in compensation? You may have your say. The British people may vent their feelings, but then we open ourselves up to millions and millions of pounds worth of compensation claims.
Well, again, we should say no to that. We really should. We should put it down in statute and say no to any foreign treaty obligations, for a start, and secondly, no to anything on compensation.
But that's breaking the law.
Well, in terms of determining who's making that subjective
made it.
decision.
We agreed
well,
it to go
we,
there.
You say we. You did. Previous
No,
governments.
and Tories as well. You say, should we get rid of the Human Rights Act?
I fundamentally
Fine,
believe
that's
we
what
should.
it's all about. Get rid of the
We
Human
should.
Rights
We've
Act.
got
The
to start
prisoners
putting-
is a sideline
We've got to have
issue.
the law. Fundamentally, this Parliament should be making the laws of this country. Parliament should have the final
All right.
say. This should not be about Europe and European
Let me
human rights. Act.
finally, just very briefly, Priti Patel, are you surprised you did not get an apology from John Hirst?
I'm not surprised at all.
OK, well, look, thank you both,
And
John
it was
Prescott.
terrible what he said.
Thank you, John
Absolutely
Prescott.
deplorable.
Thank you, Priti Patel, for being with us. Thank you.
Now, speaking of all things fluffy and harmonious, which we've just seen for the past 10 minutes here on this show, it's not long now until my favourite day of the year. Yes, Valentine's Day. My post